Perfect. Hello, and welcome to the World Federation of Athletic Training and Therapy President's Roundtable. My name is Glen Bergeron. I'm the current president of the World Federation of Athletic Training and Therapy, but more importantly, I'm so excited to bring you three amazing people who are instrumental in the creation, the growth, and the development of our association. We have the rare opportunity of bringing together all three former presidents of the World Federation on this platform to reflect on their role in the development of the association. Author Maya Angelou once said, "You can't really know where you're going until you know where you've been." Many of us take for granted that the way things are have always been that way. We don't appreciate that the way it is today required a lot of vision and effort on the part of people who dedicated a lot of their time to make it happen. Each one of our guests represents strong shoulders upon which the following president relied on to advance the association. I personally had the honor and privilege of being able to reach out to all three of them from time to time during my term. In terms of the history of the World Federation, if you're looking for a summary of the World Federation, you can certainly go onto our website at WFATT.org, and there is a summary of the history of the World Federation. But briefly, the World Federation was formed in 2000 following discussions between the National Athletic Trainers Association and the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. We're currently celebrating our 20th anniversary. The World Federation was established as an association of associations whose primary purpose was to provide a forum for healthcare professionals to exchange ideas, treatment techniques, and knowledge. In a 2016 strategic plan, the vision evolved to one of promoting the profession worldwide. The current vision statement is, athletic training and therapy will be recognized as an essential part of the multidisciplinary healthcare teams worldwide. This year, we had another strategic planning meeting, the results of which are currently under review, but strives to advance all the good work that has occurred to date. And now I'd like to introduce to you our guests in order of their presidency. First of all, Dr. Mike Ferrara, founding member of the World Federation of Athletic Training and Therapy and the first president from 2000 and 2005. Currently the Dean of the College of Health and Human Services, the University of New Hampshire. Dr. Cathy Ortega, president from 2005 to 2010, a professor at School of Health Promotions, University of Texas, San Antonio. And Dr. Larry Leverenz, president from 2010 to 2017. And now the Professor Emeritus of Health and Kinesiology at Purdue University, retired, but never stopping, is now a member of City Council of West Lafayette, Indiana. To begin with then, I'd like to maybe start with Mike as the founding member, and you were there at the very beginning of the thing, and I'm just wondering, Mike, if maybe you can reflect on what it was like to start a whole new international association.
Sure, Glenn. Thank you for that wonderful introduction about the history of the World Federation and where all three of us played a part. And Cathy was part of the initial formation of the World Federation, and Larry came in part of it as well during those early years. But it really started as a vision of the NATA and President Kent Falb. And he wanted to know if we could globalize the profession of athletic training and therapy. And at the time, he gave us three questions to investigate. Number one is, could there be a global education system? Number two is, could there be a global credentialing system? And number three, could there be a global organization formed? And then we had two World Congresses in 1998 and 1999 to review what was happening in the world to address those three different questions. We had obviously the United States and Canada involved, but we also have representation from Japan, Taiwan, United Kingdom, Germany, Spain, a whole variety of different countries at that period of time. And at the end of the 1999 Congress, the answers to question 1 and 2 at that time were no, we couldn't form a global education and credentialing model, but yes, we could form a global organization. And there, the World Federation of Athletic Training was born in June of 2000 at the NATA National Symposium in Los Angeles. That was when we held our first World Congress as well, and that was a celebration of the birth of the World Federation. There are so many people who are involved in the formation of the World Federation: Dexter Nelson, yourself, Glenn, Joe Piccinini, Jean Verrill Bayless, Cathy, obviously, I mean, Tony Bové from Spain, the names go on and on and on of the folks that were involved in doing it. And the thing that was really neat is everyone just rallied around the concept. And we needed to have a forum for globalization. We need to have a forum for internationalization and for people to come together around healthcare for physically active and athletes. Even though we all did it a little bit differently, we all had the same philosophical base.
That's great. So we'll ask some questions I get that will relate to all of you now individually. I can ask individually. Maybe we can start off again with Mike if you like. But so the first question I would ask you, and I think I asked myself this, but why did you accept the position of role of president of the World Federation in the first place?
Well, a lot of it, I mean, during that period of time for me, I was very involved in the international scene of sport. I was the director of medical operations for Team US for the 1992 Paralympic team in Barcelona, Spain. And in 1996, I was director of medical operations for the Atlanta Paralympic Committee. And during that time frame, I also served on the Sports Science and Sports Medicine Committee for the International Paralympic Committee. And so I had all this international experience, but I wanted to apply it to my profession. And when the opportunity came from Kent, you know, and he put out the call for someone who was interested, I put my name in and said, yeah, I kind of like to do that. And, you know, fortunately it worked out. You know, I look back at the experiences that all of us have had as presidents of the World Federation, and as with any leadership position, there are ups and downs, but you only remember the ups. And we had, you know, a lot of good times. And I think we created, you know, from the beginning and then through Cathy's term and Larry's term, and now your term, you know, we've created a strong foundation. And it was the, you know, the beginning that, you know, formed the base, and then we keep building upon that as we move forward.
Great. Thanks very much, Mike. And Cathy, of course, you had some big shoes to fill, and so you had to ask yourself that same question. And so why did you do it?
You know, my starting point was actually, I'll credit Jenny Miller and Eve Becker-Doyle, because at that time, it was 1993, 19 away, they started the International Committee for the NATA, and that was really those individuals, those board of directors looking globally to see what was happening. We were getting globalization of different professions, and that was kind of their goal. And with that International Relations Committee, I was tapped to serve, working on the professional women's tennis tour. And so I had some insights into what was happening around the world, and people on that committee were tapped if they had some exposure to international sports, international relations. And so that was in 93 and 95. And as Mike said, then Ken Fobb came in and expanded our question and our mission. So it seemed a natural fit. I had the, you know, really the mentorship of Eve Becker-Doyle and all those people that Mike has mentioned, you know, Dexter, Jiroshek, me to participate and contribute. So it seemed almost a natural progression. I was involved to see what was happening, learned what was going on, and just decided it was my turn to step in.
Great. Well, we're certainly glad you did. Larry, how about yourself?
Well, somewhat like Mike, I'd had some experience, or was working clinically with winter sports internationally, and was very interested in, you know, along those lines. Also, Cathy brought me in then on some committees and working in other roles with World Federation. It just, again, it just seemed like a good way, a natural move. I also began then developing study abroad programs here at Purdue for our athletic training to China and then to Ireland. And all of that put together in meeting people and building relationships globally just seemed like a good thing to do in a way to serve the profession.
And you did it for 7 years, longer than any one of us so far. So either you're a beggar for punishment or you're really enjoying what you're doing. But we thank you very much for having done that. So if we just want to go back and give you a little bit of time to just go to reflect on on some of the highs and the lows of your presidencies. What were some of the things that, you know, you really stand out to you? I think I know, Mike, you indicated that we remember all those highs and not so much the lows, but sometimes we learn more from the lows than we do from the highs. So if you can reflect on some of the things that happened during your presidency that helped vault the association to where it is now.
So I'll start on that. I think in the highs, number one were the people. I mean, things couldn't have been done without the volunteers and the members from each organization. And each of us mentioned different folks: Jiro Shikakura, or Izumi from Japan, you know, the Tony Bovee, everything. It was the people, and it was the commitment to seeing this idea become a true federation. And that to me was the biggest joy. I think number two would be the birth of the organization in 2000 and seeing it move along with the World Congresses that we did in 2001 in Canada, 2003 in Scotland, 2003 was Canada, 2005 was Scotland. And seeing those go along, I think number three was the creation of the mutual recognition arrangement, where that actually started answering those questions that we were originally charged with, in that could you have a global education system and could you have a global credentialing system? The MRA was that first foray into saying, yes, we think that is possible. And if you look at where we are now in 2020, it's more of a resounding yes that we think it's really possible to have that.
Great. And Cathy, if you got something that was moving along chronologically here.
And I guess it's a bit of the progression when Mike was talking to me about taking over his position on the World Federation. He said that exactly, that he'd given birth to this organization, and would I be willing to take it into adolescence? And I remember that. And then I handed off to Larry as a teenager, I think. Yes. But some of the highlights, you know, Mike hit upon it. Every time we had a World Congress, I thought, wow, this is fantastic. I mean, I took over as president there in Scotland and Edinburgh, and what a wonderful, wonderful meeting we had with the royal surgeons and going to that museum, just the history. And then we went to Japan, and that was another wonderful hosting by JASA and JADO. So I think each of the world congresses that we had stand out in my mind as just always bringing people together, and we found out that we had more in common than we had different. And that was particularly came to the fore in 2009 when we had the World Congress in San Antonio. We had the Education Symposium that Larry actually helped to moderate. And that's really when those questions that Mike has just spoken about kind of changed a bit with regard to their answers. We realized, you know, this is possible, because we looked at education and what people were doing around the world, again, in China, even in Mexico, in different parts of the world, and we were more alike than we were different. And so it really helped to change our insights. And I think it's part of, you know, the world was changing as well. We really were more close together than what we were apart. So I'd say those were some of the really big highlights, realizing that everywhere we went, all the people that we met, a lot more alike than dissimilar. And I have to say the trip to Mongolia was outstanding. We met with the Mongolian Olympic Committee, the director of whose name was like this long on paper. And then he said, call me Otto. I'll pass off to Larry.
Yeah, I building on what Cathy said, I think that 2009 kind of summit that we had on educational programs really began to build a little bit of momentum in the development of educational programming around the world. And I think during my time, to see those educational programs begin to develop and to really foster a creation of something that is akin to athletic training, athletic therapy in other countries. Cathy worked for years with Spain, and finally they came around. Greg Gardner was working in Jordan for many years, and we now have a relationship with them and have done some work there. You know, and the interest from countries that you wouldn't have thought of as bastions of athletic training and therapy are beginning to grow, and I think it's really been exciting to watch that, and I think that part of that has been world federations playing a role in fostering those relationships that have gone on for years and years that Mike talks about, that really, the whole, I think the bottom line to all of what World Federation has done has been build those relationships and really get to have people get to know each other in the world of sports medicine globally. I will say, as a low, we had the 2013 World Congress was to be in Italy, and because of financial situation in Italy, they had to back out. And to just as an example, I think of the relationships, Artie, the Irish group, stepped in, said, we can't do it in 13, but we can do it in 14. And they joined forces with their physicians there and had a wonderful meeting, but picked up the slack, and we moved right ahead and hardly missed a beat. So it's that kind of thing that I think really makes it worthwhile to serve in the position.
Great. It sounds like, I mean, when I hear this sort of this evolution between the three of you, it was just moving one thing along, moving it along, and you had the teenagers, Larry, and now I've got these millennials that I have to deal with.
So one thing, Glenn, if you think about the history, it's just the name of the organization. And that, when we were thinking about this back in 1999, Cathy was big part of this conversation. We went round and round. I mean, it was easy to create the bylaws and the purpose of the organization, but what were we going to call it that would be reflective of what we do worldwide? Mm-hmm. And, originally we were thinking just calling it the World Federation of Athletic Training, but the word training doesn't translate. And it's just not a good term. And through the collaboration that we have with the Canadian Athletic Training Association, Athletic Therapists Association, and Dexter and Joe and those, it was said we have to put therapy in the title. And that's how we became the World Federation of Athletic Training and Therapy, because it really is a title that reflects better what happens worldwide, and to be inclusive of everyone who's involved in the healthcare profession.
Yeah, and that's why every time I say it, I have to take a nice deep breath and say, oh, okay, it's the World Federation of Athletic Training and Therapy.
Really, and Cathy may want to comment on it, but it was really quite a discussion. It took almost 90% of the time is, what is the title? Because that sets your foundation of what you are and what you believe in. And, you do your vision, your mission statement, which are all important, but you got to have a good, you got to have a good description of what you are in terms of your titling.
Yeah, I know Dexter Nelson mentioned a number of times saying, yeah, that discussion was quite animated for a long time.
And it continues to be. I mean, every time we have a European member sitting around the table at the annual meeting, it comes up again. That we're training. It's not translating. We're like, okay, yes, we know.
Yeah,
but it was an important discussion to have, and it was important to bring everyone to the table to get there. And I think that's why the World Federation continues to be successful, because it's inclusive.
Yeah, and as we said, it is an association of associations, so it's all about relationships between those associations, and what makes up those associations are people. And so it's a question of having these people relationships. So yeah, I totally agree with that whole prospect. You said initially that the best thing is the people, and so trying to create these relationships and getting to know people worldwide is an amazing experience. I wonder if maybe you could indulge us a little bit and pat yourself on the back a little bit by just giving us an example of one of your greatest accomplishments as being the president of the World Federation. And hopefully it's not just redundant about some of the other things, but is there something that really stands out and says, I remember doing this, and this was something that was a real, I worked hard at getting that done?
I was going to answer a different way till you added the last part of it. So I'll start with two things. I think from an organizational perspective, again, I point back to the mutual recognition arrangement, because I think that really set the stage for what Larry talked about earlier about global credentialing and global education. That started to show that there is equivalency across the board between and among countries, and there is some flexibility in doing that. So I think that was a piece. I think from a personal perspective is when Tony Beauvais invited me to Barcelona when he was getting a big award from President Samaranch from the IOC. And he had a huge standing in Barcelona as being, first with FC Barcelona basketball, plus as being their head medical for their Olympic team. And to be invited to that ceremony and being part of that, for me, was personally rewarding during that period of time.
It would have been an amazing experience.
It was.
Anything bounce out at you.
So Mike threw out two things, and that was kind of my idea as well. Two things come to mind. So we'll still try to keep the time down here for you, Glenn. But
that's okay.
One of the charges that I had for myself when I became president was try to establish some financial stability for the World Federation. And so in doing that, working with the staff at the NATA was quite helpful, their marketing staff, and looking for some of those relationships. And so the founding member or the founding sponsor of the World Federation turned out to be Johnson & Johnson. And it was a really critical point because they were also the sponsor of the Olympics that occurred in China, the Beijing Olympics. And so typical of everything that happens with the World Federation, with the integration of all three of you actually in everything that occurred, we worked with Mike Ferrara, with Larry Leverenz, with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association, Dexter Nelson, did those workshops to really get the Chinese up and running and ready to do the Chinese Olympic committees. Because when we went over, they had no concept of taping for prevention, of on-field emergency care, what that really meant. And so we did a series of workshops, and I really am proud of that, but it wouldn't have been possible without Larry Leverenz's connections in China, in Beijing, and then without Mike's, also his expertise with being able to present these sort of big events, but also workshops and keeping those relationships going. So I'm really proud that we did that, and I really do give credit to the World Federation and all the associations that are members for helping the Chinese Olympic Games to be such a success. And then the other thing was the facilitated discussion that we did in England, when England was having several organizations that were trying to get, as Steve Aspinall would say, HPC recognition. We actually, again, Larry sent Richard DeMont, some folks from Canada, some folks from the US, went over there, and even from Spain, and had a big roundtable, had a nice, almost a summit, actually that's what we called it, an education summit, and brought people together to talk. And I think that's what the World Federation has been about, facilitating membership interactions and those relationships. But if it wasn't for the three of you that are right now having this discussion, I don't think any of that would have happened. But I am proud that we're able to do that.
No, good for you. I remember, just as a side note, with Mike Ferrara and I went in and did a taping lecture in Beijing.
Yep.
And we walked into a room and there were 200 people in the room, each with a roll of tape in their hand. And we go, what are we going to do with this? But it ended up working out pretty good. Yeah. But it was an amazing, we just blown away. There was 200 people sitting in a room, teach us how to tape.
Well, Larry, weren't you and I at a dinner, and we got a phone call, or the president of the university there sitting with us got a phone call. All of a sudden he hung up. He says, there's going to be 100 people instead of 50 tomorrow.
That's
okay.
Right. That's right.
Larry, what strikes you the most?
Well, I think again, it's this kind of theme of building on previous accomplishments. I think probably my biggest that certainly Greg Gardner led the effort there, and was very instrumental in getting that done, meeting with people around the world and trying to develop a set of guidelines that we could give an institution that said, okay, this is what an athletic training, athletic therapy program, educational program might look like. What were the essentials of that program? And so we put that out there. And Glenn, you know that you and I are working with the current education committee for World Federation in revising and updating those guidelines. So looking forward to that. And also continuing the theme of two things instead of one. Cathy mentioned funding, and funding has always been a challenge for World Federation. And during my presidency, that funding from Johnson & Johnson ran out, and so it was kind of a gentleman's agreement anyway. But we worked very hard, and I worked with Brett Mueller, and now have brought Brett on and Mueller Sports Medicine on as a sponsor, an official supplier for the workshops that we do around the world, and I think he's become very excited about World Federation and what we're doing. And so I think it really gave us a boost toward financial security, certainly more than we had before. And then certainly, you have built on that too, Glenn, and put us in a very good, I think, a very good situation now financially.
Yeah, we do have to give real thanks to Mueller Sports Medicine, because they really did take a leap of faith. I remember being in those discussions, and they were looking at other options for other opportunities and things, and they said, okay, well, let's try this for a year and see how it works out. And to their credit, they are now come on. The contract that we actually have with them now it's been changed. It's an ongoing contract. It's not a yearly contract. It just keeps running itself year to year unless somebody decides otherwise. So we don't have to negotiate it. We just amend it with names and things like that and dates. But other than that, so we're very, very fortunate to have Mueller on side to do that and provide us with that sense of financial stability to keep the association running the way it should. So I want to give kudos to them when I have that opportunity. So thanks very much for saying that, Larry. Are there anything that comes to mind when you say, there were some huge challenges that you had to overcome at some point in time during, I know, trying to do some of these things? It might be a little bit redundant, but there might be some things that said, you know what, there was this one thing that I felt we really had to struggle to try and get over that. And once we did, everything worked fine, I hope. Anybody got anything there?
Well, I'll jump in and refer to that education summit again, the one that we had in the UK. And I think that was just really, really helpful from a learning perspective, because it really gave me insight as to what our purpose is. And yes, we had our strategic plan, we had our goals, but really, I think of the analogy with Star Trek, that prime directive. Go in, but don't change. Advise, facilitate. You have to let the natural progression. So I always think of Star Trek with the World Federation. And really, that was an interesting time, because we had membership organizations wanting to all be members of the World Federation. And we really had to think through, what is our purpose here? And is there a problem with having all of these groups in? And how do we get the best outcome for everybody? And then we realized, you know what? We don't get the best outcome. It's not our decision. It's not our place. We just facilitate and allow the country to decide what they're going to do. Those organizations are the ones that should be in charge. But that was at different times a bit of a stressful, tenuous time. And I'll say for a period of a year, 2 years. And luckily, all those groups came together and had some good discussions, and they found their way forward. And I'm proud of that, but I think it was a learning for us, and we learned from our members, because that's what this is about. It's an educational model, and really it transforms the learners and the teachers and everybody involved.
Yeah, it's a very good point. As I said at the very beginning, that this is an association of associations, and it's only as strong as the strength of the member associations. And so we have to make sure we foster and facilitate their growth and their development so that they are strong, so in turn we're strong. But we can't force it. Yeah, it's a good point. Larry, Mike?
You want to go, Larry, or?
Sure, I'll jump in. I've already mentioned the financial challenges, and I think during my time there, we were seeing growth. We were seeing people wanting us to help them in different ways, and certainly I think the challenge was to come up with financially how could we do that, and at the time we basically had to go to the NATA, and we were very much not, I'll call it a somewhat a committee of the NATA, and we were very much under their guidance and under their wing, and certainly NATA really helped World Federation, and World Federation could not have survived without their financial help, and I don't mean to downplay that at all. But in order for us as a World Federation to do the things we wanted to do, and to build educational programs and develop organizations within different countries, we had to have some finances to be able to do that, and certainly that was to me a huge challenge, trying to get that done, and hopefully we've at least set the groundwork for that and moved on. And as I said, Glen has also reorganized some things, and now I think we're on pretty good ground.
So for me, the biggest challenge, but the biggest reward was developing the organization. You know, we started with an idea back in 1997, 98, and in 2 years to take a blank piece of paper and to fill it in with beautiful lakes and trees and mountains to make a fledgling, but a vibrant organization. You know, we originally started out with 7 different charter member organizations. And at the time we had to make a decision, who is a member? Should a member be an individual, or should it be an organization? And we spent a lot of time discussing, you know, which way should we go and what are the pros and cons associated with it. And those decisions that we made, you know, back in the 98 to 2000 in terms of the form and the structure of the World Federation, you know, evolved into what each of you are dealing with. So all your problems, they actually fall back on me. Because that's how we formed. I mean, that was what we thought was the best model at the time. Was to be an organization of organizations, much like what FIMS does within their organization, kind of copying that model a little bit. You know, but over that 2-year period from 98 to 2000 and 2001, I mean, that, you know, there are a lot of things going on to try and make us an organization. And during the early years, we had great financial support from the NATA. I mean, they were fully invested in what we were doing, but, you know, things changed over time into Cathy's and Larry's presidency, and presidential priorities changed within each of our organizations. So, you know, we had to be nimble enough to adjust to it. Unfortunately, Cathy, Larry, now you, Glen, you know, have taken that mantle. You figured out how to do it and keep it as a vibrant organization.
Yeah, and I guess thanks to a lot of the work that you've done. I mean, you mentioned that you started off with 7 members, and now we like to boast that we have 41 members. We are in 11 different countries on 4 different continents, and we represent over 50,000 athletic trainers and therapists. So it's a true tribute to the work that you've all done in that regard. And just really the interest that all of our associations have really, you know, stepped up to the plate and made it all happen. So having said all that, I mean, I think maybe I'd just like to get some insights into, you know, maybe a bit of a reflection from you, but also a little bit of forward thinking in terms of what have you seen happen in the time period throughout the last 3 presidencies in terms of development, but more importantly, where do you see us going? And I'll leave it to whoever wants to start first.
So I think there's tremendous opportunity. I think because of the COVID-19 and the way it's impacted the world, I think presents huge opportunities because you can't do it as a single group anymore. It's got to be an international collaboration, and we need to work better together to strengthen our education system and to strengthen the way that we prepare the next generation of athletic therapists and trainers. I think borders are coming down. I think the use of technology, such as what we're doing today, gives us tremendous opportunities to strengthen education and strengthen the membership, and whether it be through formal programs or conferences, congresses, etc. I think there's a world of opportunity within that area. That's the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm sure there are others.
So that, just to follow up on what Mike is saying, that's a bit of what occurred to me too. I think we're realizing that not only are we quite similar, but the world is a lot smaller than we thought, and we're so interrelated. You know, part of the challenge, a big challenge that we have had, is getting to South America, getting to parts of the world, getting to the Far East, some of those regions that really need assistance with on-field emergency care, with keeping active populations safe. And I agree with Mike that we can now expand with the use of technology, and this COVID-19 is making us aware that things that people said were not possible, we can't do that. The regulations say, you know, we've realized that those just get blown up because they have to. And I think we just have to be a bit more creative and really tap in to the current generation that is quite good and creative to just reach populations that we have more in common with than not.
I agreeing with both Mike and Cathy. One of the things that really struck me as I developed and worked with our own study abroad programs here at the university, as well as working with the people around the world involved in World Federation, is as Cathy said, how small that world is now. You know, the students always complained when we went to China about you know, this 13-hour plane ride. But at the same time, I keep telling them, you jump on a plane in Chicago and 13 hours later, you're halfway around the world. And that's how small things are. And we have to, I think World Federation really gives the profession that we're all in the ability to relate to others around the world. It gives us the opportunity to learn from people. We have people doing research in Asia and Europe and wherever, and we learn from them. It doesn't all happen in North America, and we have, I think, through World Federation began to realize that, and we have. I think right now we're seeing a lot of interest in World Federation. I think, you know, Glenn, as you've mentioned, we're seeing different nations, organizations within those nations coming to World Federation and asking for membership, or what do they need to do, or how can we help them? And I think all of that is just vital to our profession as it moves forward. And to see, you know, the group of young athletic trainers that make up the Asia Pacific athletic trainers in China, Southeast Asia, throughout there, and the work they're doing to promote the profession there. And you know, World Federation has a role in helping all of those people promote the profession and have it develop worldwide. I'm very excited about what's happening. I think, you know, and part of this, I think you've seen as we've all talked, there is an evolution that took place, and it's not done yet. We're still moving.
And Glenn, I think another point of pride for all of us, all four of us, is just seeing the next generation take the leadership mantle and seeing the development of others who have the same passion for globalization and the same passion for the World Federation. And you think back, you know, to students that each of us, you know, had under our mentorship and traveled worldwide, but really training and preparing others to take on leadership roles and to be involved in the World Federation.
Yeah, you know, this whole smallness of this globe just blows my mind away. Being in this position is the first time that I've really had that, you know, connectiveness to it. I just, as an example, Larry's on our executive meetings, and we have them at 4 p.m. Central Time here in Winnipeg, in the center of the North American continent. But at 4 p.m. us, that means that Daisuke in Japan has to get up at 6 a.m. And Siobhan in Ireland it's 10 o'clock at night. So he's just getting up, she's just going to bed, and I'm just getting ready for supper. And so it's interesting how and you know, of course, they're all coming from a different perspective. One's just woken up, the other one's had a full day, and I'm still a little somewhat energized, but it's just amazing how we do that. And on a daily basis, I'll talk to people in 3, 4, 5 different countries, and I go, I can't believe I'm doing that. And it just really is an amazing experience to do that. And the committees that we have too, one of the things that I think is great that the committees we have they have a real international flavor on them, and that there's representatives from across the world in every one of our committees. And when we talk about leadership, those are the people who are going to step up next and try and make this happen in a much bigger way than I can ever even imagine. But it's just great, as you say. There's tremendous potential for the World Federation. I have to say that that this has been an amazing opportunity to hear from each of you. Collectively, we have to give you all a resounding thank you for sharing your visions, your passion, your time, and your dedication to the World Federation. You're all role models for our leaders of the future. The World Federation has a bright future, and I can hardly wait to see what our future leaders are going to do with a very solid foundation that has been developed under your leadership. Thank you all for sharing your wisdom and your insights. And thank you to those who have taken the time to view this podcast in an effort to get a sense of where we are, where we have been, where we're going, and what holds what is the future for the World Federation. I want to thank you all for attending, and hopefully we will see you all in the future moving forward. Again, to our guests, I have to say a real thank you very much for doing what you've done today. I think this is going to be a very special piece of history, I think, that will live on, and people will reflect on it for a long period of time. So thanks very much for doing what you've done already and what you've done today.
You're welcome, and thank you for organizing this. This was really fun.
It was. Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks, Glenn. Much appreciated.
Good.
Take care.
All right, take care. I'm going to stop the recording. There we go.